What's up, guys? Corey back here again with the final video where we set everything up. There was a lot of prep for this, but understand it's to get to the final product. Alright, so we have our page here running perfectly. Remember, if you're going back to this video after you restarted your computer, run that sudo service Apache 2 restart or start for you, and that MySQL service start. And when you go to your page here, as long as you hit enter, you should get a blank screen and connected from our JavaScript file. So within this, let's start getting our file going. So first thing we're going to do is create the HTML to this. So we give a div class of container. All of these classes here are a part of Bootstrap. So that CSS file and that JavaScript we loaded in earlier. If Bootstrap's not something that interests you to use, you can ignore the classes, but it'll probably be pretty difficult to look at. So we'll go with a div class row and a div class of column. If you do a single column, that means it'll take the entire width. Go in here, type h1, view appointment times 4, and then we are going to run PHP inline, and in here we are going to run echo month array, then do search month -1, and these are variables we haven't declared yet. So it's going to yell at us and tell us everything in this world is wrong. But we're going to fix that real quick. So what this is going to do is it's going to say view appointments time for the month that we're currently in. So what we're going to do at the top is we're going to define consonants. So PHP is a little bit different than other languages where you would just do all caps or something like that. You'll use a special function called define. The first one we're going to create is a day array, and I am 100% going to cheat so I don't have to write this out and waste your guys' time, but this will be an array of days. And then I'm going to define a month array, use the power of copy-paste, and copy-paste this over from my first file of an array of months. Alright, now that we have that, it's in the order of months 1 through 12. Go down here and you're like, well, why is it -1? So remember, an array starts at 0 and the months start at 1. So I'm in October right now. October is the 10th month. Not insulting anybody's intelligence there. However, in there, it's the 9th month because January is 0. Let's see if this worked. Let's see if I set it on fire. View appointments time for blank. Well, that's not good. What did I break here? Oh, I know why. Is I didn't put the search month. So, go here. I'm going to create a block here. Variables to handle setup of the calendar. So these are things we are going to use inside this file to create our actual calendar. So I'm going to do the search month equal to 10, which we're in right now. Then I'm going to do days in month. And this is a PHP function. It's not something that we are going to make. Calendar Gregorian. Then I'll do the search month and then the year. So this is a function that's built into PHP. As you can see here, what calendar we're using. The Gregorian calendar is the standard calendar. Then the month, so search month, we set it to 10. And then the year. So I've typed these in statically. Outside of the scope of this course, if you want to set up the months dynamically, you're more than welcome to. We're going to go down here, set up another variable called date counter, set it to 0. And then we're going to set up a date object, which is equal to a new date time. This is another built-in object from PHP. Set it equal to search month, and then 0, 1. So that'll create the first day in a month. And if you're curious, when you use double quotes in PHP, it creates something unique where you can call the variables inside of it instead of just having to put the dot syntax. So it's just a nice little shortcut there. And then I am going to do start date number, and we are going to set it to array search date object. Name them the same with the format of L. Day array. So as we go along in this project, all of these variables will be used in some form or fashion. What did I break here? Expected 2 arguments, found 1. Oops. All right, but as we go on in this, we are going to use all of these variables in some way that is just used. So what I mean by that is they'll be used at certain points, but we're going to go over a brief understanding of what each one is. So the search month is, I said it statically, it's October. Days in the month, so this is going to return how many days are in October of 2021. Day counter is something we're going to use later on to count how many days we've gone through. The date object is going to get the first day of the search month, and then the start date number is going to return L, means the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. We're using a built-in PHP function called array search to find it. So the first day in October is on a Friday. Yep. So we're going to take this date object. We're going to use this special syntax where this arrow where it calls a function inside of this object, and the L is used to return the date. So the first day of October, when we return it, will be Friday. And then we search for it in this array to call it. So that's just how we know where to start our array at. But all right, hit save there. Perfect, October works. All right, go down here. So everything's going to be inside of this container. This is part of Bootstrap's it is a part of their, what's a good way to say it, their grid system. This is a great tool. Instead of getting bogged down with CSS, I'm not the best at CSS, but I know how to use Bootstrap and Tailwind. Okay, but it lets me create these things very fast and very rapid to just prototype documents. But the first thing I'm going to do is do column 2, close that off, and then copy that twice. So if you're on Windows, what I did is Alt-Shift and then the down arrow. If you're on Mac, I want to say it's Control-Shift up, or it's Command-Shift up, or Option-Shift up, but it just copies whatever line you're on. But what I'm going to do for the middle one, put an 8 here. So what this does is Bootstrap, whenever you're inside a row object and you're calling columns, it sets up a grid that is 12 long. So this will always take up 2 blocks out of the 12. This will always take up the 8 blocks of that. You can set it up dynamically, but that's not the point of what we're doing here. But what this will do is it'll give us good padding on the left and the right so that our information stays centered. And if throughout this entire thing you're like, how do you know all this off the top of your head? I promise you I don't. The majority of all these things, like array search, using this format, understanding these Bootstrap items, using the calendar days and month of the calendar of Gregorian, it's not something I just knew off the top of my head. It's something that I use the documentation. Documentation is the best way you can learn any of this. Tutorial helps you understand the foundations, but if you're trying to learn how to do stuff in a language, the documentation will always win. But with that being said, we are going to create a table with a class of table and then table striped. Create t-head, and then we will create t-body. So inside of t-head, what we are going to do is call table row, then we are going to go into PHP, then we are going to make a function inside of there sorry, not a function, a for each. So for each of day array, and then as day. So if you need to iterate over something in PHP, or most languages have a for each built into it, most scripting languages like Python, JavaScript, and PHP, but older languages sometimes don't. I'm not 100% at which ones do and don't, but it's a great method to iterate over data. So for each will take the array, and then every instance of it will be put into this day object. So what we'll do down here is echo out table with a scope of column, and I want to put this day, and then we will add to it the th, ending th. There we go. Hit save. Now, as you can see, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday were typed out for us. So perfect there. Now what we're going to do farther down, I'm going to use the power of taking a Bootstrap module. So Bootstrap, like I said, is a great resource to get a bunch of stuff for us. So I didn't write all this out. Bootstrap, let's see if I can look it up real quick. Bootstrap, get started. I want a modal. So I go in here, and as you can see, this modal right here, I just copied all of this in here, or I copied the live demo one, as it shows us how it works. I took that button text and showed it. It works exactly like this. So Bootstrap saved me the time of having to make this modal. All I did was copy it over, and the main thing I added over from it is this form. I wrapped everything in it, and in here I created this right here. So if you want to copy that down or just use the GitHub repo, either way, it's just to set up this form that I have in here to actually create the appointment. So we'll hit save there. And then what I am going to work on are the PHP files that make everything in here work. So what we're going to do is work on the time block. So how this is going to work is we're going to have each calendar box. Each calendar box inside of it is going to have all of the time segments. Inside those time segments are going to be the time objects themselves for people to click on and make their appointments. So what we'll do is go to layout. I'm going to create a new folder in layout. I'm going to call it calendar items. First one I'm going to create is the time block.php. We'll go up here, type out our PHP. Then I'm going to name a function called time block item. I'm going to give it an integer of day, and then an array of taken appointments current day. So how this works is the integer is the current day it's on, so either that 1 through 31, 1 through 30, whatever is given to it. And then the array is the items that are already taken for that day. So let's say the times of 10 and 4 were taken, it would be inside of this array. First thing I'm going to do is create all of our variables. So is striped, this is just a semantic thing of striping out a row or not. Times for appointment. So this is another thing you would want to call from a database or have something dynamic for it. But these are the times that I'm saying, hey, these are when appointments can be made, whatever it is. Have something called a return string. Div class equals container. Then div class equals row. Then we'll have an end string that will be closing off those two things that we made. So how I have this set up is we'll have our first string that's going to start everything, and then we'll have our end string. We're going to throw all of our information into the return string. glue the end string to it, and then return it. All right, so what we're going to do is iterate over all the times for appointments as time. And then inside of here, I'm going to create what's called a data string. So for PHP, when it generates this, I want it to put a certain amount of data inside of each of these HTML documents. So just going to type it out, then we'll talk a little bit about what exactly I am doing. All right, so if you've never seen these before, I've never seen that J before, data is a special thing you can put in an HTML document that we can call this. So when somebody clicks on this certain item, it'll have a data key of day and then a data key of time. So when they click on the 12th of October at 3 o'clock, we'll know what day they clicked on. And this is just an easy way to insert that into the HTML document. Next thing we're going to use is, I'm going to write this out, then I'll explain exactly what's happening. Dot equal text white BG danger. All right, so this just shows one of the biggest powers of PHP. It has in functions like this, like in array. So remember, we're receiving this array of all the appointments that are taken. So we're going to iterate over every single time any appointments. And if the time is inside of this current array, it'll push out that not available. So this built-in function here kept us from having to make a double nested array of checking if something is inside of an array. What we'll do if it's not inside of that array, that means it's available. We'll check is striped, go in here and do return string, dot equals. Dot equals is like plus equals, but for a string. And we'll do a div class of BG light. We'll put on a class of time div, then a data BS toggle equal to modal, then a data BS target equal to appointment modal. Then we'll do a space, and then we'll add that data string, do another space, put a space right there, and add the inner HTML, and do that and close it off. And then what we're going to do here is drop down a line right there, and set is striped to the opposite. The opposite of is striped. So what this is doing right here, if you're like, what's data BS and these two right here, if we still have the Bootstrap thing open, the appointment modal is that modal that Bootstrap gave to us. These are the things that let Bootstrap and the Popper.js model know, hey, when this is clicked on, this being that time, open up that modal. Hopefully that made sense with that. If it's not striped, we're going to do more or less the exact same thing, but in the class, I am going to type out just time div. Time div is a class that I'm going to use to grab a lot of these later on. Then we will go target, do the hashtag appointment modal, hit the space there, then do the data string, and we will add everything else onto it. So add the space there, then do the dot for the time, add the end to it, and then, just like before, isStriped, we will set it equal to the opposite of isStriped. So as it iterates over everything, let's say isStriped is true, it'll go through here, add this one with the lighter background, and then reset it. So the next time it goes through, it'll go through this else block, and it'll just go back and forth with all of those dates. Just adds a little bit of style to it so that we can see what it looks like. But once that is done, let's get rid of some of this white space. We'll go down here, type out return string, set it equal to the end string. Oh, sorry. We'll append the end string to the return string because this is the end of it, and then we will return the return string. Perfect. I'm just going to hit enter here. I'm going to import it, require once, and then do helpers, layout, calendar items, time block. Hit yes there, refresh it, and it doesn't throw any errors, which means I didn't do anything super bad yet. But the next thing we're going to do is create the calendar block itself. So the calendar block is the item that holds the calendar date itself and that time block. Calendar block, let's enter our PHP mode. Go down here. I'm going to set a function of calendar block item. We are going to get an integer of a display number and then an array of taken appointments. Perfect. Now, don't quote me on this, but if you're using something before PHP 8, this integer in this array will throw an error. So these are just for documentation. PHP is not a strict type language, but if you're hovering over the function, this will just be used to be like, hey, you need to send a number here. Hey, you need to send an array here. We're going to create a taken appointment current day as a variable, and we're going to set it to an empty array. So in here, taken appointments, that array that we receive as taken. So each individual item in this taken appointments has that variable. If the first item inside that taken equals the display number, I don't even know what I hit there to make it do that. Array, we're going to call another function in here. Thought it would be easy and up at the top, but it's not. Array push, taken appointments current day, and then taken one. So this is going to be using an array that we declared later on. Now, inside of this array, what's happening at the start of the root of the program is we're creating an array that's 2 dimensions. So it's going to be an array that has an array inside of it with another array. So let's say on the 10th day of October, there was an appointment for the 5th taken. Or there was an appointment at 5 p.m. taken. Well, that's not let's do 11 o'clock. Then the next one that's taken is the 10th at 3 o'clock. So this array is being made at the top level when it talks to the database. What this is doing is it's taking those taken appointments and it's seeing if the day, so the first element inside of this individual item, oh, the 10th, does that equal the display number, the current day? If it does equal that, then we need to tell this array, hey, this time, so the 11 o'clock or the 1300, if you're not familiar with military time, anything past 12, just minus 12 and add PM to it. But add that time to it. So it'll create another array that we are going to send to our time block, and our time block will use it to let them know, hey, that time is already taken. But we are going to create a bunch of information now using our Bootstrap classes. I'm going to go in here and format these so they're a little bit easier to look at. Column 4, 0 ms0. We'll type out strong. Strong just makes things bold. Echo out. Display number. So the way I'm writing this, you don't have to necessarily write it like this, but it's just so we can see the formatting of it. Just makes it a little bit easier to look at. As you can see, with so many ways of PHP, there's so many ways to write out things. So what we did here is the display number is the calendar day. So I put it inside this column of 4, and then the other column has a column of 8, so it'll force it over to the left-hand side. That's all that's happening there. There's nothing crazy going on. It's just for styling purposes. Now what we're going to do is add a div of, since I use double quotes at the start, I like double quotes inside of here, but we're using this so we can add variables into it. But it's super easy. You can just type out a backspace before it. So I use double quotes at the start. I need to use this character right here that lets it know, hey, this isn't the end of the string. It's just this is a special character now. And as you'll see, I'm going through here. I could have done single quotes at the top, but then I would have to concatenate the string, and just for how this is formatted, I didn't want it. This also shows you other ways that you can use PHP. But yeah, nothing crazy there. Off, do one of those. Then I'll need to import our time block item. I think, oh no, it should be able to because they're in the same folder. Pretty sure. I mean, we'll find out now, right? Echo time block item, display number, take an appointment current day, and then we are going to close off all of those other divs that we opened up. Perfect. All right, that's done. And we'll have one other function we're going to make inside of here, and this is a special one called generate first row PHP. So the first row is slightly different than all of the other rows at how it works. So remember, we set that variable to whatever the first day was as Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. This is going to use that to write out the rest of the rows. Generate first row as data or date number, and take in appointments. So we're throwing that taken appointments everywhere, so everything has a way to talk to each other. So the taken appointments is a variable that we declared at the top level, so it can be used in several other places like we have it right now. All right, we're going to create a variable in here called internal day counter. Set it equal to 0, then a pseudo day counter, and set it to that internal day counter to 1. So remember with arrays that they are 1 off of what we think the actual number is, so the pseudo day counter is going to help offset that. We're going to type in here a table row, I'm going to end it down here so I don't forget. And inside of here, we're going to declare a for loop. I is less than or equal to 6. 6 is the days that are within a week. Remember that days in a week are 7, but this starts at 0. Calendar block item, pseudo day counter, then ticket appointments. So we're passing it the pseudo so it shows the correct day. So the 0th day of the month is actually the first day of the month. That's why we have that in place. And internal day counter plus plus, then pseudo day counter plus plus. So we're just adding 1 to both of those variables. Oops. Supposed to put this inside of a if statement. Grab all of that. All right. Else echo a blank row. Okay, so what's happening here is, remember that the first row of any month, let's pull up my calendar here, the first day of October is on Friday, the 1st. All of these other days don't matter necessarily for October. So what we're doing with this is the start date number will be the day number equal to whatever day it starts. So the start day number for this is 5. I want to say it's 5. I don't remember off the top of my head what the week starts with in PHP. But if it's less than that, just do a blank row. If it's greater than or equal to that, then we're going to start our actual row. This is why the first row is special compared to the other rows, because it doesn't start with the start of the month. It starts halfway through, midway through. It may do the whole thing, or it may only do 1 day in it. All right, so that the internal day counter is being returned. So what this is doing is, up here with our day counter, it's going to count all of those days for us. Since the start row is special, it needs to return and let the day counter know, hey, this is what happened with it. So if that doesn't make a lot of sense, we're going to go right over to it and show exactly what it's doing in case that confused you. All right. So we're going to go down to the table body. First thing I need to do is import all of those. So I'll copy that over. Then I'll do calendar block PHP. And I'm going to do generate first row. We're going to open up the project, hit refresh a million times, make sure that importing these didn't break anything. We're going to go farther down here and jump into our PHP mode. For some reason, Visual Studio Code is not happy with PHP. When you enter it, it throws the tabs off. We're going to generate the first row, give it the start day number, then start date number, and then take in, what have I not called yet? So our start date number, where have I not called it yet? No, start date number. Okay, I don't know why I was yelling at me then. We'll go down here. And before we do that, I'm going to jump around a little bit. Sorry, guys. But I want to finish up this SQL before, so that everything else makes sense. So So what I'm going to do down here is we're going to create some space. We're going to call something called all appointment SQL result equals connection query select everything from appointments. And we are going to create a function that I'm going to call later on down here. I just kept this function in here because I didn't think it took up enough space to have its own file. So we're going to name it find taken appointment. We are going to get a MySQLi result. We're going to call SQL query result. Oh boy. There we go. All right, we're going to call something called a return array. This is just going to be the thing that holds all of the information that we want to give back when this is called. So what we're going to do is iterate over that result individually as a result. We'll call new date equals new date time, and it is going to be each of those response, and we're going to get the appointment date. First thing I'm going to get from it is the appointment month. So this is not something I'm going to be using in this program, but something if you want to use later on to dynamically set the month. Then we'll do appointment day with the new date with the format of that exact day. Then appointment hour equals the new date with the format of hour. Go up here, fix that. I spelled it wrong both times. Good night. All right. We go down here, do array push. What we're going to give back to that return array, and then the array of the appointment day. Oh boy, I spelled it. That was not a good line for me. So the day that it happened, and then the hour that it happened. And then we will make sure I'm just inside that function. We'll return the return array. So earlier when I was saying there would be an array of arrays, first argument's the day, and then the second is the hour. So if you had an appointment on the 10th at 10, it would be 10:10. If you had an appointment on the 6th at 12, it would be 6:12. It's just an array that we can reiterate over to find those values. Ooh, what you yelling at? Oop, there we go. All right, now we're going to go back up here. Let's finish up this part of it so we can start putting stuff on the screen, and hopefully I typed everything correctly. Guess we'll find out. All appointments SQL result. Perfect. Let's go down here. Create day counter equals generate first row with a start date number, and then take an appointment, then +1 to offset the array. So this is offsetting the array by the day counter. It's going to get the array number back, so we need to add 1 to it so the day counter knows where it's at. Now while the day counter is less than the days in the month, we are going to echo out a table row for I equals 0, I is less than or equal to 6. This is kind of like what we did in that generate first row. We'll echo out that. then do a calendar block item, give it the day counter, and then give it the taken appointments, and echo out TD, and then we will go over the day counter. And then once all of that is done, we will echo out table row. All right, let's see if that works. Perfect. So as you can see with those data objects I added, now it is creating that modal for us every single time we click it. So that was just a shortcut I used with Bootstrap. But before we can submit anything to the database and make this work, we need to do two things. We need to set up our database getting the information and doing something with it, and we need to set up our JavaScript to handle the form. So I'm going to go over to my app.js. We'll handle the JavaScript first. We're going to go in here, and I am going to get a bunch of things. Query selector all of data day. And I'm going to get const of modal body, element by ID, modal body. I'm going to get a const of the submit button equal to the document.getElementById. by ID. Grab it. I'm going to get the const of the submit form. Get that. Now I'm going to set the selected day to 0, and then let selected time equals 0. So we're just grabbing a bunch of documents and we're creating a bunch of variables. This was just a bunch of setup. These square brackets right here, if you're trying to find something by an attribute, you can put the attribute inside of there. So this is grabbing all of those day divs that have the data of day on them. But with that done, I am going to go down here and I am going to set up a bunch of functions that'll help us out. So the first two I'm going to do are formatting functions that are going to receive something called time. We're going to set AM PM to time if the time is less than 12. If you've never seen this before, it's like an inline if statement. Set it to AM, if not PM. So what this is doing is it's running this function. So if the time is less than 12, call it AM, else PM. We'll do in here. This is just a bunch of formatting. It's not really a logic thing. It's just to make things look nice. The ampersand is and in JavaScript. Perfect. So this will just format our time to make it look nice. And what we will do down here is I'm just going to grab this and we'll talk about it. So format a day. If the day is 1, it'll put the day plus first. If it ends in 2, it'll add second, third, and then handle everything else with a TH. All right. Now let us set up everything else. All right. I'm going to create an event listener function. So this is called function handle time div click. So whenever you click on one of those items, such as any of these, so 9, 10, whatever, this will also run on top of that modal. So selected day equals e.target.dataset day, and then selected time e.target.dataset time. So this is just grabbing it from those data sets for those specific values. The data set, like I said, is how HTML can talk with these other variables to set something up. But we're going to set the get elements by tag name. I'm going to grab the P, and there's only one P element inside these modal bodies. So down here, if you notice, there is a P tag set up with nothing in it. I'm using this as a placeholder to put in information. I'm going to set the inner HTML to setup time for format time, selected time. Get outside of this on the then format day with selected day. So these right here are not quotes, they're backticks. They're next to the one key if you're using a QWERTY keyboard, and it lets JavaScript use this special syntax that I can call variables and functions with the $sign. So $sign curly braces will break out of the string and let us add a little bit more information in there. All right, and then we're going to have a function below it that we're going to call inside of that. We're going to call it function assign input values day time. Modal body get elements by tag name. Input dot there we go. For each, then function of single input. If you've never seen an iterator like this, so JavaScript sometimes has an issue, depending on the browser, at how to iterate over certain objects, like a collection of HTML documents. If you use the array object, what you want to iterate over, and then a for each, it'll map itself and do everything the correct way. You know, instead of relying on your browser to maybe have the correct for each for an HTML collection, you can just use this, and it's a more standardized way to iterate over something. But I'm going to type some stuff out, and then we're going to talk about it. Get attribute. Single input value equals selected time break default is break. All right, so what this is doing right here is it's iterating over everything inside of this modal. If it finds an input, it's going to check if the type is hidden. If the type is hidden, it's going to check the name, and if the name is a day, it'll set its value to the selected day. If it's a selected time, it'll set it to the time. The reason we have these is the user doesn't need to see them, but they are being used to submit to our forum object to run this. It's just a way to set stuff up in the background. But the reason I need to set that up is it is a part of that. So perfect. So every time somebody selects that div, let's see if it works right now. No, because I haven't set it up. But every time they'll click one of those objects, it'll set up the date and the time within that modal. What we're going to do now, let's go up here. And then, whoa, we'll set array dot from a divs dot for each function single day div. So a day div is this entire box. That's what the single day div is. Let time columns equals single day div dot query selector all. Get all of the items with a date time data set. So all of these will have that data set. And we are going to go over all of those time columns, add a for each to each one of the individual time divs. Then we are going to add the time div.add event listener of type click. We will run the handle time div click. So the stuff we wrote down there. So if I did everything right, on the 14th, 10 a.m. on the 13th, so it's assigning it every single time. We can check, just click anywhere in there. As you can see for the hidden, 17 and 14. So it's formatting it up here for people that like to read AM, PM, but it's still using 24-hour time on the side. But now we're just going to add one last thing to our JavaScript click function of E to that submit button. So the first thing I'm going to do is prevent the default from happening. So when you hit the submit button, I don't want it to submit the form right away. What we're going to do down here, I'm just going to copy and paste this over, and we're going to talk about it. So it's going to grab all of those inputs that we just put in there. And it's going to check if the name is blank, if the email is blank, or if the day or the time input is less than or equal to 0, so not a valid day. It's going to return. What return's going to do here is it's just going to kick itself out of the function. If you want to go more in depth there, you can add validation like making the field red, or if the day input or the time input's wrong, just force refreshing the page because obviously there's something that didn't load correctly or something like that. But if all of these validations go through, it'll submit the form. So that's it for our JavaScript. We'll go over here. Let's hit the 13th. Type in here at test.com. Hit save, and it'll send it off, but nothing happens because we haven't created the function to handle what's going on in there. All right, let's get that final function rocking and rolling and see if everything works or if we just created a big old problem. All right, so let me go over here. I'm going to create a file in our database folder. Now I'm going to name it appointment.php. Now inside of here, I'm going to create a PHP function that I'm going to call insert appointment record. I'm going to take an object in here that I'm going to call post object and then connection. The post object will be the actual post that's being sent to the server, and the connection will be the MySQL connection. I'm going to copy these over, and we are going to talk about what's going on in there. Click in here. So what this is doing is grabbing the username, the email. The reason it's username in some places and name in other places is name is a key inside of SQL, and if we try to use it inside of SQL, it's going to throw an error. So switching between username and name is because of semantics of the language. But when we receive the post object from the form, we'll receive the username, the email, the day, and the time. And these are built-in functions from PHP, filter variable, and it'll run these against it. If any of these are wrong, it'll immediately cut out and say, hey, you know, this didn't work out. It'll declare itself false. So if it's false, the database will not be able to insert it, and it's just a little bit of protection. Do case by case with everything that you insert into SQL database to make sure that somebody can't do an SQL injection and ruin your stuff. But what we'll do down here is I'm just going to copy this over too. Then we're going to talk about what's happening in it because typing it out is not as important as understanding what's going on. So this is an SQL query. These question marks right here is us telling PHP we're going to put values into there. We hand the statement, well, we create a statement and we tell the connection to prepare it. So it's going to grab this and put it like, hey, we're ready to send off this SQL query. Then we're going to use a special function inside of it called bind parameter. Strings, the S is the default for string. It's just the default one you can use, but there's a whole thing in the documentation about, hey, you can use this to do this. So like if you're expecting a number, you can use an I like this instead. But if you don't want to use that, you just want it to do its basic validation, you can just use S's. We're sending it the sanitized name, email, and appointment date. As we see with our appointment date here, we formatted it how MySQL wants the data to look. And we execute that. Grab it right there. Then we'll go over. And what we are going to do is right below this connection dying, is we're going to look inside of another built-in method from PHP. That's the beauty of PHP, is it's all based around web development, so it'll have all these methods that are just used to help you out. But we're going to check if it's a post, which means the user is sending information. Down here at our form, our method is post. Post means, hey, we're trying to update a server with a body instead of, if you've ever seen a URL with a bunch of stuff at the end of it, that's a GET request. If you don't want things inside the URL, like this information of appointments, you'd use a post method. Get methods are kind of just the basic way to open up a page. When you refresh a page like this, it'll take you to a GET request, but a post will process server data. We're going to go up here, require once, helpers, database, the appointment, grab that. Then we will run insert appointment record. We'll give it the post object and then our SQL connection. Once that's done, we'll hit refresh here, make sure nothing sets on fire. We'll go in here for 10 a.m. on the 1st. We'll say for bob at bob.bob.com. Hit save changes, and now it's not available. Try with the 23rd for Sandy. It's sandy.net. And as you can see, it works there. So that's the end of the project. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you like the content, please feel free to subscribe, and if you want more of it, please leave a comment below about things that you guys want to learn, and thank you so much for your time.